For those of you who know me, you know I'm not a morning person. And it's not that I dislike mornings in general, I do. But it's just that I like my sleep more. But sadly, there's been times that I haven't been a good sleeping person either. Especially if I have a lot on my mind. Sometimes I'll just find myself lying awake in bed for hours. But I've read somewhere that that's not good for you either. So every now and then I'll just end up getting up and starting my day early and maybe catching the sunrise. Jesus woke up on Passover morning, and maybe like us, he started to think through his day and everything that he would do. Later on in the evening, he would meet up with his disciples in an upper room and share a Passover meal. Passover was a feast the Jews had once a year where they would celebrate how God had rescued them from slavery in Egypt. So Jesus is going to meet with his disciples, and it's also here where Jesus is going to institute the Lord's Supper, something that we still celebrate in our churches today. Jesus is going to use things that are already on the table, a cup of wine and a loaf of unleavened bread, but he's going to use them in kind of a new way. He's going to use them as symbols of his blood and his body that are about to be shed on a cross. After they get done with the meal, they go up to the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus would often go and pray. And they go there again. Jesus prays, and that's where Judas comes and betrays him. But going back to that morning, I wonder what it was like when he first opened his eyes, when he first woke up. I wonder if he thought to himself, I will never sleep again. As soon as he woke up, as soon as his feet hit the floor and his day began, the clock had started. He was on his way to the cross at 9 a.m. the next morning. And he wasn't surprised by this. He knew this day was coming. His whole life had been coming down to this. Had been pointing to this. He knew this was coming all along. It was his mission. But I kind of wonder if that day in particular, it was hard to get out of bed. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kid, Jesus didn't struggle with getting out of bed. Surely not. Why? I don't know. Maybe he didn't. The Bible doesn't say that he did or he didn't. I don't know what was going through his mind that morning, honestly. But I do know what was going through his mind that night while he was praying in the garden. In Luke chapter 22, starting in verse 39, it says this: Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. You know, many times we emphasize Jesus' divinity, that Jesus was God. Yes, Jesus is God. But also, Jesus is 100% human as well, just without sin. He had feelings. He still had fears, as we see here. Jesus is in the garden and he is terrified of something. He is terrified because he knows what's coming. He's terrified, probably something about the crucifixion that's coming, but it may not be what you think. Because I don't think Jesus is terrified of the pain. I think Jesus is terrified of something else, and it's in what he said. It's what he prayed. Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me. What Jesus is saying, what he's talking about, is the cup of wrath. God's wrath, God's holy anger. God is so holy, he cannot stand sin because it's so offensive to him, that his wrath, his judgment against sin is seen as being held in this cup. In the Old Testament, that's the symbolism there, and it's something that is served to the wicked to drink. It's something that is poured out on the wicked, on the sinners. And Jesus knows that that is what is coming. That is what he will be drinking, and that he will be taking for us. And he knows that is coming. You see, in the past, God had commanded the people to sacrifice an animal. And what that would do is that would temporarily push back, it would hold back God's judgment on them. It couldn't forgive sin completely, but it would hold it back. But God wanted to show them that they were guilty for their sin, and something innocent had to die in their place. But now the time has finally come that God's cup of wrath is going to be poured out on Jesus. Jesus is about to experience the intense anger of how much an all-powerful, holy God hates sin. And it terrifies him. It terrifies him so much, and he's stressed so much, the capillaries in his skin begin to burst, and he begins to sweat blood. An angel from heaven comes and strengthens him, probably so he won't pass out. And I thought about this as we approach Easter. We're remembering the crucifixion, his death, burial, and resurrection. If I am truly to understand and begin to understand the price that Jesus paid for me on the cross, I have to begin with understanding the magnitude of the crimes that I've committed against God. And if Jesus, who has a perfect understanding of God's holiness, is that afraid to face God's wrath against sin, I should be thankful every morning that he took it for me. Because I know that there was a cup of wrath with Kent's name on it, and he drank every drop.